On. Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have a special treat. We have Miss Deneen Garrett, who is a coach, speaker, and consultant. And tonight we are going to talk about sailing. Let's get out on the water. Good evening, Deneen. Thank you and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody.
I am so excited that you are here because my favorite place to be in the world is on the water, whether it's on a boat, whether it's on the beach, a lakefront, a riverfront, a pond. As long as there's water, I am excited. But we're talking about sailing, and you are a part of an interesting group that promotes sailing in Detroit. Can you talk about that? Tell us the name of the group, tell us what the mission is and why you joined the group.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Sailing Detroit. It used to be called Challenge the Wind Youth Sailing. So I have a 20-year-old son. When I had led a community or created a health awareness committee for an employee resource group at work. And I would have different, speakers come once a month, talk about out of the box type of exercise. And so I had some sailors on and they were talking about, sailing, how it is a form of exercise. And they told me about this Challenge the Wind Youth Sailing program. At the time, my son was an 8th grader. I said, hey, send me over the information. And I signed him up immediately. And when I told him about it, he was like, oh, okay, what am I going to be selling? Because the way that I pronounce sailing sounds like selling. So I'm like, no, not selling, sailing, right? And even to this day, I have to help people to understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, so he started through the program. Again, it was before his 9th grade. He went through it the entire, all of high school, became certified as a skipper, and even comes back to help with the students. And so he will be back again this year. So that's how my son got it started. And I'm one of those moms who expose my son to different things, and I just sign him up and he's there. And so that was my introduction to this program. So again, it was called Challenge the Wind Youth Sailing, but in 2020, they added an adult sailing. And so they changed the name to sailingdetroit.org. So that's, if you're looking for it online, it's sailingdetroit.org. But my focus is on the youth.
Excellent, excellent. So why did you decide to join the board? Because in our conversations, you were talking about your board member. So your son went through this program and he enjoyed it, but what made you decide that you wanted to become a board member?
Yeah, so I'm one of those moms who's involved. And I was always there, right? When they were during their sessions, I'm there, helping out, volunteer. And they actually asked me, because of being that type of mom, would I join a board? And I was like, sure, absolutely. I don't know anything about sailing. I'm not trying to learn anything about sailing. I want more of our kids out there, right? And, you were sharing with me how you love the water. Same with me, girl, give me a pond, put a pond in front of the house.
Exactly.
I'm good. I love the water. It's so peaceful. It's, it just does something to your spirit, right? And so I love water and I loved being down there. So when my son went through the program, they were at Kings Marina. So, I'm there, I'm, have my laptop, I'm doing my work, I'm, sitting there on a table right on the river and just really just enjoying that experience. Now they moved over to the historic Belle Isle Boathouse. So for those, if you're not familiar with the boathouse, if you're going across the bridge to Belle Isle, it's that right there to the left. They row out of there and they've been rowing out of there for a number of years. But we moved over there, I think, in 2019. And I love that they have their own space, right? It's a designated space for the students and again, now the adults as well.
Excellent, excellent. That sounds amazing. And being a native Detroiter, I feel bad because I don't know about this program, and I love being on the water. And as you said, a pond, it doesn't matter. It could be a pond, a river, a lake, an ocean. It could be a canal, and I'll just be excited. But
Right.
Deneen, you said something earlier when you told your son, and you said, you're going to go sailing, and you were talking about pronunciation. So
Mhm.
was your son excited? Talk about his growth process, because you said that he's a skipper. Now, as a
Yeah.
skipper, tell us what a skipper's role is, if you know, or what
Yeah.
you think it is.
Yeah. So what I know is in order to be certified, in order to be a skipper, you have to capsize the boat.
Okay.
So that means flipping the boat over,
Mm-hmm.
right sizing it, and getting back into the boat.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when that happened for my son, and again, at this time they were on Kings Marina. So I'm across on Belle Isle watching them and watching my baby out in the river and his, classmates flipping the boat. And they did it probably about 2 or 3 times. But yes, so that was part of becoming, that was part of that certification. And so you're certified, or he's certified through the US Selling organization, and that's like a premier, eminent organization for selling, and they have the criteria that you have to go through. So there's several things that you have to be able to do in order to get to that particular level. And then the capsizing is a component. It's probably like the main component after you meet everything else. So, and they sail by themselves. So there's boats that are boats for 2 persons. There are boats for 1 person. And so the kids, and it's ages 10 to 17, they're out there on their own. And again, as far as those that have demonstrated that they're capable, they pass the criteria, and they want to go further, then the next step or the final step is like capsizing. And then they get their it's a card that they receive that they send off to US Sailing for the certification.
Wow, amazing. So your son can capsize a boat and then
Yes.
right side it back up. There were a few cruise ships that probably could have used his services, because we heard over the last few years a couple cruise ships that actually capsized, and I know that's quite a much larger vessel. But maybe your son's skill could have said, "Hey, this is what you need to do to get it back over."
Right. Something, right? You know what? And so what's interesting about what you're saying, once you are at a certain level, and I'll just, even with my son, so my son, still at this time, he was still in high school. He may have been about 17, actually did sail, and he competed with adults.
Mm.
So, the selling community, as I'm learning, is that it's a very close or welcoming community. Someone was telling me how their grandfather had learned to sell like 20 years ago, and this is a Black man. And 20 years ago, wasn't very many of us out there. Today is not very many of us out there, but you know what? There's more than we realize. It's just that you just have to seek it. Right. So once you do, you like, oh, there's this Black Sailors Facebook group. Then you find out it's so many people out there that you didn't even know existed. But with this particular person, he didn't own a boat. He didn't need to own a boat, because people were like, hey, he had some friends that are like, sure, you can take our boat out. Anytime you're wanting to come over, take the boat out. And I've heard that within a community, how to sell, you're able to demonstrate it, people will let you take their boats out. So that's a beautiful thing.
That is a beautiful thing. And it is amazing that people have resources like that. And I want to put a pin in that, because I think that's an interesting point to bring out, that there aren't that many African-American, quote unquote, Black people that are sailing. And a lot of times there's a historical component to that, but I want to come back to it. But I want to ask you this question. Does your son know how to swim?
He does. You don't have to know how to swim in order to sail.
Okay.
So that is something, that is something to point out. However, with the program, they do tell you about, you can go they will assess you. So in the very beginning, they will assess you to understand your comfort level with water. So it's not even so much about being able to swim, but how comfortable are you with water? Because if you're fearful, then, you know, we're not going to get too far.
Right.
But it's more or less to understand your comfort level and then to move forward from there. And then they also like, hey, you can go, you know, learn to sail, and it's on a website, like different resources, different, you know, places you can go to learn how to swim, but it's not necessary.
Okay. And that's a good point, because a lot of people will say, oh, I would love to sail, but I can't swim. I don't want to get in the water and, you know, I'm drowning.
Right.
And
Right.
not understanding that you have life vests and jackets and different things that you can use to float and keep you safe. Deneen, what would you say to a parent who says, you know, I would love to get my kids in the water, but I am deathly afraid of water. And because I'm so afraid of water, now I've convinced my children that they are afraid of water. Because I meet a lot of parents when I tell people how much I love water. I cannot swim. And yes, I'm saying this on the Kim B. Davis show, and I've been in the Pacific Ocean, I've been in the Atlantic Ocean, I've been in lakes, rivers, yes, and ponds. And I go out very far, and all of my friends will laugh at me because they'll go, Kim, you're all the way out. The buoys are right there. I said, I know as far as I can go. And they're like, but the water is up to your neck. If you fall, I'm like, I'm praying that Jesus is going to save me. But the reality is I cannot swim. I just haven't learned. And with COVID, it sort of interrupted some plans because I wanted to learn how to swim. So many people have a fear of water. And this is a true story. When I went to Hawaii with my husband is one of those people who's deathly afraid of water. I said, we cannot fly across the country and go to Hawaii and you not put your feet in the water. I said feet. I didn't say up to his knees. He's 6'4", just his feet, just his feet. And took him to the water and he was shaking. And I was like, you are 6'4". The water is literally, this is the shoreline. He's like, don't talk about me. I'm afraid. And I understand that because so many people have fears around different things. Is there hope in the program if someone has an intense fear that the program will work with them to help them get over that fear, or do they need to work on that and then come back?
Yeah, so I would say yes and yes, right? Yes and yes. So the yes to the first part, as far as working with, the thing about it is they're there and they're giving you instruction, right? So there's, you know, from 9 to 1, whatever, there's instruction. And in day one, you go out on a boat. So there's not really a lot of room and even personnel to actually spend time with someone who is very extremely fearful, right? Because what you're describing is, you know, like, oh my, you know, like you said with your husband, the water touched him, just his toe or whatnot, and he stiffened up. Well, you're not about to get on a boat. You know what I'm saying? So, and we don't, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I'm not an instructor, I'm not part of that, but you know, when you think about it, no, you're not ready. And so you would want to, you know, get comfortable with the idea of being out on a water, because again, day one, you get in the boat. Okay.
Exciting.
Now, my recommendations as to how you can get comfortable is come down. Come down to when we're having the classes and look. So 2 things. You mentioned a parent. If the parent is the one that's fearful, drop your baby off and keep it moving. But if you put that fear in your child, then bring the child and let them see the other kids doing it. Let them see little kids and little girls out there. And they're in a boat. They're by themselves in the boat on the water. So let them expose them to it. It may not, you know, like let's talk about this year. Bring them down this year. Let them see the kids. This may not be their year. And then come next year. Or bring them down to the first session just to check it out. It's already sold out. yay for us, but bring them down, like they can peek, take a, have a look at what they're doing in a first session. And then if the second session is still open, potentially sign up. But you definitely, if you have that fear, that deep fear, you don't need to try to take a sailing class. Not yet. You got to get over that fear. You need to work through that.
And you're correct. And I've had conversations, and again, I'm going to refer back to my husband. We've talked about it, and we've been on boats before, and it's been like pulling teeth and having to pray and talk and all of that, and put it on a life jacket. Like, I'm just going to sit right here. Nobody touch me. Leave me alone. And I understand that. But for kids, because you're trying to expose them and bring them to new experiences that will help them grow, these are important tips and tools to help. Now, you had mentioned something earlier, and I think it's a very important point. The lack of, that's not what I want to say. The small number of Black sailors that we typically see. When we see sailing, typically we see that as in other cultures, and we see people on fancy boats. We see people in boating gear. And we understand, most of these people probably have a membership at a yacht club. They've probably been doing this since they were kids. And so when we come to the African-American community and we say, oh, well, come sailing. And people look at you like, oh, do I have to have a membership? Are we going to have to buy equipment? We can't afford that. People start to look at costs. But also, there is a terrible history with African Americans, Black people in America, and water. We've had segregated beaches where Black people would go and swim. In Chicago, we had something called Red Summer, where a young man happened to just be floating in the water and ended up floating into, quote unquote, the white space of the water, and a riot ensued. There are cases where we've had young people who were wonderful swimmers who wanted to come to a swimming pool and swim and weren't allowed. And one particular case, I believe it was in Chicago, there was a young Black kid who was on a swimming team, and he wasn't allowed because it was a segregated pool. And the people finally got the authorities or the officials or whomever it was, leadership, to let this child in the pool, and they put him on a ring, so to speak, an inflatable, and walks him around the pool, but he was never allowed to touch the water. And so when we talk about history, there is so much that has happened that's made people fearful of going to the water. They don't want to go certain places because they don't want to be trapped or get involved in something that could cause them harm. What do you say as a parent to someone who would say to you, Black people don't sail? Why did you decide to allow your child to do that?
Yeah, so all of that is valid, right? And that's just our history period as Black people. We can say the same things about basketball at a point, any of the sports, we can say that, that happened in those sports at that time. What I would say is to tell them that there are Black people, show them that there are Black people. And that's what the presentation does. So if you go to the website, sailingdetroit.org, and if you go to the HBCU partnership, then you'll see some history. You'll see that Africans had strong connections to the sea as a source of spiritual power, right? So we embraced it. We embraced the water. We've sailed for years. We've, back in a time when you didn't think that we did. We've always been there. Right? But you don't know about it. People don't share that information. And it's because of some of the reasons that you just said. Those are the things that we know. So we don't look any further. We don't like, oh, I don't want to deal with that because of everything that you said. And everything that you said is valid. But if you're interested in it, learn about it. Learn about the positive. So I have the presentation pulled up in front of me. And so I was intentional with this presentation to be able to start off with the history of Black people in sailing. And so the first thing is that we have a strong connection. From there, we go and we talk about some misconceptions about people being afraid of water. It says there's a misconception that African American people are afraid of the water, swimming in the sea, because 10 to 20% of them died in the slave trade on the ship reaching America. And so, yes, there's some fear to that. And then there's also, there are people who are not fearful of that. There's some history with Frederick Douglass being able to escape slavery, dressing as a sailor. And some other things. Like, there's a lot of history here to share as to our history, positive history with sailing, with the water, right? To combat the negative. The negative exists, right? The numbers are, the facts, the numbers are small for us being in this, but there's multiple reasons for that, right? There's also just sheer numbers. There's less Black folks than there are white folks, right? So just automatically based off of that, it's going to be a smaller number. But again, once you start like getting into it, you learn that, oh my goodness, there's this Facebook group, there's that Facebook group. You have all these different people that are out there sailing, and it just blows your mind, like, oh my God, right? And it's because they're on the water too. A lot of the folks, they're like Chesapeake Bay, the Maryland, Virginia areas, they're on the water. It's nothing to them. They've been doing it. They've been out there. That's just their norm. And so you have that as well. With us, it's not, right? We have the river, but nobody was thinking about going out on the river and getting on a boat. You know what I'm saying? We just maybe went to the beach. Right. In these other places, that's what they do. That's their playground, the water. And so then coming to more recent, I include several sailors and captains. There's a Bill Pinkney, and he actually wrote a book. There's a children's book. I'm not sure if it's out just yet, but I know that he was doing some crowdfunding around the book. But he's the person who actually spoke to my group. And then they introduced me to the program Challenge the Wind, and they're out of Chicago. So they sail out of Chicago. So it's Bill Pinkney, and he's the first African-American in the world to circumnavigate the globe alone by boat. Wow. And then there's a captain, Donald Lawson. So he is out in San Diego, and he leads the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for U.S. Sailing. So, I was talking about U.S. Sailing, and that's who you get certified through. So he's on the Diversity, Equity Committee with them. And then there's a Sheila Ruffin. So Sheila, she graduated from Hampton and Howard. So she can truly say she's an HU, right? But she started her own yacht charter company. So she has Soca Caribbean Yacht Charters. And she's a young woman. There's a Marie Rogers out in LA. She's been the first of this and the first of that, an older woman. She was the first Black woman to hold the Commodoreship at a Los Angeles yacht club. And then Amy Sinclair, another young woman who at the age of 28, she was exposed to sailing, competitive sailing, and started an organization for Black women. So to those people who, this is what you share with them. These are the strides that we're making in sailing. We're out there. We are out there. So we have to expose people to that, right? Those other things happen, right? They happen. Unfortunately, they happened. But here's the positive. Here's the beauty. Here's the history. Here's what's happening today.
That is absolutely amazing. And you know what I heard? I heard a lot of women innovators in that. Does that help in the recruitment of young girls into this program? Are girls interested, or is that somewhat of a struggle?
No, absolutely not. So it was really amazing to me. It was several years ago that I think it might have been even more girls in the program than boys. And even if it wasn't more, the girls stood out to me because they just seemed to be more engaged. They seemed to be like they were really more so in it. And as a matter of fact, I ran into the other day a young woman who went through the program. graduated through the program, helped with the program, and she went on to Michigan State and was part of their sailing program. And she's an adult and she's graduated from college and she'll be back to help out. But no, there's like three, my son's age, there's about 3-4 women that's, yeah, well, yeah, they're women now that stand out that went through the program with him, and they still come back and they still helped out beyond high school.
Wow, that is amazing. So these kids not only are learning sailing, but it sounds like they're learning some great life skills that they can apply later on after they're done with the program to help them be successful in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And then something that they're doing this year, there's a STEM component as well. So yeah, there's a STEM, and the young lady that I mentioned is her mother. She's an educator, so her mother bringing STEM to the sailing. So that is something that's being offered this year as well. So a lot of things this year. So I mentioned the sailing pipeline. So in December we had our board meeting, and I'm like, you know what, I want to see more Black kids out there, and let's partner with an HBCU. And found out there was on one, it's Hampton, to get more of our kids. So a couple things: one, get more kids out there sailing, so 10 to 17, and then for those who they're at the age, like they're going to college, to say, hey, did you know Hampton has a sailing program? Would love, to see you there. And I did partner with Hampton. I did partner with the head of sailing as well as the athletic director, and they're so excited. The thing that blew my mind is that their sailing program right now has 0 Black.
Wow.
Yeah.
At
students.
Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And so talking to the coach who's European, I believe he's Italian, he said how, he said, US kids are really not into it. Now, I don't know if he was meaning Black kids, but and those students who are sailing are also, they're international. Right? So not only are they not Black at an HBCU, they're not even US kids.
Wow.
And so again, that's why I'm like, no, we need to get more of our kids out there, and and just get them out, whether you go to Hampton, whether you go somewhere else, because there's other schools. University of Michigan has sailing. I didn't even know that, or I probably forgot it, but they have sailing as well. So Michigan State has sailing, U of M has sailing, right? So it's just about getting our kids out there and exposing them to it. Now, another thing, and you talked about money and all of this, they're not part of the NCAA.
Okay.
So there are no athletic scholarships. So then there's other ways, like you would academically, and or maybe some of the schools might have money through some other kind of way. Okay. So that's another thing that may be a deterrent to some people. But my thing is, just in life, build relationships. Get out there, those yachts, right? If you're going through the program, learn, get connected with people who have boats. Because like I told you, these people are generous. I was at a dinner, and it may have been hosted by Grosse Point, not sure which, but one of the persons at our tables said that he has a boat that he's trying to give away.
Wow.
His children are not interested in sailing, and he's like, I have this boat I want to give away. And I'm like, my son should have been there at that table. Yeah.
The opportunities that are just before you are stunning.
Yes.
Just stunning.
Yes.
Wow. Deneen, this is an amazing program. What can we do to help bring more visibility?
Yeah, so definitely getting the word out, sharing it, letting students know. I worked with the Hampton alumni, like, hey, can you help me get this out? Me on social media, I believe you and I connected through LinkedIn, so I'm sharing it that way, but just getting it out, letting more people know, letting our Detroit, parents and kids know, hey, we have this thing, we have this opportunity for you, and take advantage of it. As I mentioned, the first session is sold out, it's already closed, which is a great thing. But the second session is July 25th through August 25th. So that one is open right now. The hours are from 9 a.m. to noon, and it's Monday through Friday. And so for those who might want to just kind of like, well, what is this about? Come down to July 11, come down and just see what's going on, or even come down during the adult sessions, right? The adult sessions are going on right now. And you can kind of come out and even ask questions, right? Like, hey, tell me about this, and what could I expect for my child? But yes, getting the word out, letting people know, get us out there. And again, taking a look at the presentation that I put together, because as I said, I'm talking about history. So that's for the people who are like, oh, but then, what I'm saying? And then, so what can I do with it? As I mentioned, you won't necessarily, the money to pay for school, you got to be probably kind of creative with that. So it's not going to be an athletic scholarship that you would get, let's say, in a different sport. But it's the people that you meet. It's a whole different level. It's a whole different game, right? And it's a whole different tax bracket, if you will. And then, and the thing about it, and here's the other thing too, it's also affordable. Right? It could be affordable because maybe, instead of getting something else, that's what you put your money into, right? Because not everybody is extremely wealthy. So let's take that away as well. Not everybody is extremely wealthy, but they decided that I'm a sailor, I want a boat, and so they know what it costs for that. And so maybe they don't do or have something else. They have this instead.
Like people will save up money and buy a car. Maybe you decide, you know what, I want to invest in a boat, and maybe I'll share it with my friends, and then we split the dock and the storage costs and all of that and the maintenance. And every summer you have something that your friends don't have, where you can say, well, I'll meet you downtown. You just got to go pick up your boat and sail, and there you are. So that's a wonderful thing. And you're right. People are very generous. It is a different tax bracket. One of the interesting things that I know about Michigan is I believe, if we're not still, we used to be the #1 boat capital in the country. We have more boats here per capita than they do on the East Coast and the West Coast. And I thought that was an amazing statistic, and it was because we're on lakes versus oceans, and it is much easier to store a boat here versus having to store a boat for the ocean, I guess because of hurricanes and different types of storms and things.
No, I think I probably heard something similar. But yeah. Right. And then because it's also beyond Detroit, right? Some people that you're just thinking downtown Detroit would know, then you have St. Clair Shore. I mean, you have up Jefferson just down here, but then look, Traverse City. What about, those other places off the lake? So yeah.
Port Sanilac, Traverse City. I believe it's Harrison Township. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a way that you could travel up the lakes and go around Michigan and come back on Lake Michigan and be across from Chicago and on that side of Illinois. And maybe if you figure out how to get past that waterway, you can continue to go on. That would be a fascinating trip for people to see if you could actually do that. Deneen, this has been a fascinating conversation. Please give us the website, tell us how we can find you and ask you additional questions, and give us the dates for those classes again.
Yeah, absolutely. So me, Deneen L Garrett.com. That is my personal website. You are able to access the HBCU sailing pipeline from my website, and then other stuff that I have going on as well, right? Connecting with me on LinkedIn to, learn what I'm doing beyond sailing. And then if you just want to go directly to the sailing website, it's sailingdetroit.org. Again, we have the adult, we have the children, the youth, and there's different components that we're offering for the youth. So make sure you're checking that out. And then you asked the date. So let's see. What is open is the July 25th through August 5th session for the youth. It's Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon. Then also, as I mentioned, there's also for adults. So, the adults can learn as well. But again, wanting to keep in touch directly with me, DeneenLGarrett.com is the best way, as well as just following me and connecting with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Deneen, for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. We really appreciate you being on here. We're going to definitely check out your program, spread the word on this wonderful sailing program that you're supporting, that we have here in Detroit, and hoping that people will truly sign up and become a part of that.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you guys for tuning in. You know me as your host, Kim B. Davis. You know, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere on social media. And it's Kimberly Batchelor Davis. And Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. I hope that you will join us on our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.